up, and welcome to the Artist Exchange Radio Show here live only on BeExposedRadio.com. It's me, your host, Nate, and we're coming live from my boudoir. You can see my headboard. This is really weird because nobody ever comes in my room, and I'm letting everyone in my room now. But my guest today is Miss Maureen Lewis, the social butterfly herself. We did an interview on E. Digger's show, the Charm City radio show last week. And I
Yes.
have been fascinated with Maureen since I met her, actually, just to be transparent, because I can tell when somebody got a lot of just life in them and they just holding back. And I
Yeah.
just saw her like holding back for so long. But over the course of the last, I want to say like 2 years, you've just been blossoming and spreading your wings and just showing off. I'm gonna just
Yes.
say it like that. So how have you been, Miss Maureen?
Oh my gosh, I've been blessed. I have been blessed. I mean, especially considering all that's going on right now. It could be worse, but I'm in a constant place of gratitude, so I cannot complain right now. All is well. Thank
And
you for having me.
and anytime. But in terms of just your growth, we spoke a little bit off when I had asked you to do this, but I wanted to just talk about your journey. Actually, today's topic is her story,
Hmm.
and just the struggle of just opening ourselves up. Some of
Yes.
us are a mixture of being an introvert, extrovert, and a lot of us are dealing with life issues. And like in where we at in actually this literal moment right now, we're
Hmm.
all dealing with ourselves, especially
Yes.
the ones of us that are like solo dolo, are
Hmm.
really dealing with who we really are and coming to grips with that. And I wanted to, as much as you're comfortable with, just share that change that just happened with you in the last like couple years since you left Be Exposed Radio actually.
Okay, sure. I want to go. I mean, this journey actually from doing the work in therapy, this journey goes as far back as when my mom passed away. And that was back
Mm-hmm.
in 97, 98. But long story short, I lost her to chronic alcoholism. And mental illness was part of that, was kind of the contradicting, was kind of the factor in play with that. Um, back
Mm-hmm.
then, talking about mental health was just something that we didn't do. It was something that our generation, our mothers and fathers were scared of, our families. And so when
Mm-hmm.
I started seeing the signs of mental illness, my mom was really scared to get help, and so therefore she was self-medicating through alcohol. Fast forward,
Where do you think the fear came from?
I think the fear came from just that culture.
Mm-hmm.
My mom grew up in the 60s and the 70s. And so mental health looked a lot different than it does today. That support, that go ahead and get help. And the way my grandmother described it, back then when they didn't know what to do with you, they didn't have that
Put
facilitated.
you up in the room and didn't let you come down.
Yeah, yeah. They really treated
Mm-hmm.
you like you were crazy instead of actually getting to the resources and the problem. And so my mother
Right.
avoided that. My mother avoided that. And she passed when she was young. She was 38 years old when she passed away.
Oh, wow.
And I was 21 at the time. And fast forward, I think dealing with that form of grief was kind of hard for me because at the time I was 21, I had small children, I was also raising a brother, and
Mm-hmm.
it was like we were children raising children practically, and my vice became emotional codependency, constantly in relationships, not dealing with myself, partying, drinking, overworking, and not really having enough time for my children and not really having a lot of patience for my kids. So it was a lot, our people, we tend to deal with, because I didn't even know it was depression or anxiety. I just looked at it as I'm just a workaholic. I'm just doing what I gotta do for my family. I just gotta keep pushing despite the circumstances, and I think it was after my divorce, because I married for the wrong reason. It was like so many things that I was doing just to be like, I need somebody. I need someone.
Running away
from the problem. And I want to say it was 2018. I think right after we got off the show, right after we left the show, I started noticing that I was forced to deal with myself. I was forced to deal with myself because my kids were growing up. My children are adults practically. They are adults. My oldest is 23 in a couple of weeks, and my youngest is 13. But the older they got, the less dependent they came for me. They needed me, and the more I had to deal with myself. And so those things that I kept just like putting on my back because I gotta work, or putting on my back because I gotta feed the kids, those things I couldn't hide behind anymore. And so it became anxiety. It started showing up with just fear that came out of nowhere, just afraid to just leave my house. And it was, as my friend called it, because she's in like the health and healing and wellness, she called it a healing crisis, where the body is now the body keeps score. There's a book called that. The body keeps score. And my body was literally pushing up all those things that for 20 some odd years I just been suppressing. And
what does it feel like though? Some of us have been through that, but what does it, in your opinion, what does it feel like, or what did it feel like to you?
Oh my God.
The way it was manifesting itself.
How it was manifesting itself? It was manifesting itself. All I could say is it was just complete dread and fear. You know that normal feeling that you feel like you don't feel like getting up? It really felt like I could not move. I could not come out the house. I was having like tremors. I would find myself being totally okay and then in a corner because I can't breathe. And it was the physical aspects of it felt like I was just a total alien to my own body. Like having like total.
Did you feel sick?
I felt sick. I felt sick in my mind. I felt sick in my stomach. I couldn't really, it was hard for me to eat. I was losing weight. And I was just, it was so complex because it was hitting me in so many different directions. It was like from my stomach being upset to my throat feeling tight to excessive sweatiness, and just the feeling that I couldn't move. And then I was beginning to have, I went to the doctors to get help. And the doctors were just like, okay, we'll just put you on this medication. And so they put me on, I believe it was Lexapro. I agreed to it. I was like, whatever it takes to get this feeling out the way. And what I didn't know was that the Lexapro was causing suicidal thoughts.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
So
and
that became a side effect of it.
It became a side effect for me. I was having nightmares and I was having suicidal thoughts. And I just remember that morning going to my neighbor and like, I can't be in my house no more. I have to go to the hospital. And that's when I put myself in the hospital. I was like, I'm a happy go lucky person dealing with something right now that I can't explain. And and I don't want to come back home until I figure out this because I'm having suicidal thoughts. And before I even knew it was the medication, I just thought it was me. I just thought I was completely losing my mind. And so I had admitted myself for 2 weeks. And it was the best thing I could have done for myself. And coincidentally, I admitted myself around the anniversary of my mother's death. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was like 20 years in that my mother had passed away. And here I am doing what I asked her, not, asked her to do. I'm now doing it.
Mm.
I'm now doing it. And so I
Your
looked at,
body was subconsciously working.
yes, yes.
Mm.
It was like, and I realized that when I got to the hospital, I was like, wow, this is on the anniversary of my mother's passing. And
Mm-hmm.
what my family was afraid of at that time, I'm now working through that so that my legacy, my family, can look at mental health differently, and
Mm-hmm.
I remember being in that space. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't have any visitors. I wanted to just be
Mm-hmm.
totally secluded to myself. I remember my daughter controlling all the phone calls and text messages. She was the one that was texting anybody at that time. And I just remember just dealing with myself and realizing that all those things that I was suppressing were coming up and I had to deal with them. And I remember asking
Right.
them to put me, because it was very laid back in there. Like it wasn't like a straight jacket feeling or anything. But I asked them to put me in this room that I guess they put people who get like really out of control. And so this room was like a
Mm-hmm.
noise cancellation like room. And I remember going in there and just screaming and just letting it out and just having it like releasing everything.
Did you feel the relief as like the longer you stayed there?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Mm.
I
I'm
remember feeling
wondering,
that.
just in you sharing your story right now, I'm thinking about moments I've had. I'm thinking if people can see themselves here, mine is going to get the help.
Mhm.
And it feels, I remember when you started talking and you started posting, I could see the people on your thread. If you follow some of them back to their pages, some of the information they started to share. And these
Mhm.
are people that would never have done that before, were
Mhm.
not that uh, vocal or open about it. And I really started, that's when I really started like following your page. One, because I wanted to make sure you were really okay. Because sometimes
Yes.
people go through these things and they start communicating and it almost brings them back, like going
Mhm.
backwards. But I
Mhm.
saw you like steadily, like it felt almost like you were just opening yourself up to a space that you never, and that was just the way I saw it from the outside looking in.
Mhm.
Did
Absolutely.
it feel that way?
Yeah, you know what? And I'm gonna tell you the truth. Initially, I didn't want to tell my story. Initially, I was
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable. I was embarrassed. But what happened was someone actually worked at that hospital and knew me and saw me, and we didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
greatest relationship. So I was very concerned about him
Right.
disclosing my information. And I said something like, if anybody's going to tell my story, it's going to be me.
Right.
And I think that's what encouraged me to then say. And then the more I spoke, the more I felt like the anxiety was less to deal with on my own. I think it felt worse because I was dealing with it by myself. But the more I
Mm-hmm.
opened up and people were like, hey, this is what I've been through too, that just kind of made it
Yeah.
easier for me. It made it easier. Yeah.
Was that the impetus for you to like really change your whole course? Because I know you went back to school to be a massage therapist, and you
Mhm.
really started being more vocal about how you were feeling in that moment. And I had noticed that on your social media. I mean, don't think I was just creeping, but I
No,
was
we're
really
like,
just
yeah,
following your message, and it felt
yes.
like what I was seeing from you was starting to manifest and actually what you were starting to do. If you felt more adventurous at that point, and I never
Yes.
saw you post a lot outside of radio stuff or just sharing other people's events. It
Mm-hmm.
became like the Maureen show, and it
Yes.
was right. It really just felt as a relief watching somebody take the necessary steps to like improve.
Yes. You know what? I think what it was is for the longest time I was doing things in support of other people's visions and dreams. And I'll tell you the
Mhm.
truth, I went back to the show and I spoke with E. And I remember telling him before we even decided to part ways, I said, I can't, I said, as of October, I have to, me personally, I have to remove
Mhm.
myself. And so much love was given, so much love. And
Right.
then at that point, he decided, you know, I think this is best. And then that's when we made the unanimous decision. But
Mhm.
um, I think what it was is that I was so supportive and just trying to find my way for the longest time. And then when I found it, it was time for me to get a little selfish and start focusing on the things that
Mhm.
made me happy. And so
Mm.
it felt good to be just a little selfish and just focus on me for a little bit, as opposed to kind of being the support factor for everyone, which I love, but I just had to take that break for a little bit for me.
How did it feel, like, especially being in a moment like this, where everybody else is panicking and they're going through a lot of those deep moments? How are you working through moments like this
I'm gonna tell you
that
the
we're in
truth.
right now?
You know what? I was telling someone that when you have lived with anxiety and PTSD all your life, things like this just happen. This just comes natural. This is like, okay, the
Uh-huh.
moment we've been waiting for is finally here, and
Right.
so the panic. So now I'm pretty calm actually in a place where
Mhm.
with compassion I understand that other people are handling it differently. But my therapist actually maybe about a week into this, I had a phone
Mhm.
conference with my therapist and she was like, you don't even need me no more. She was like, you
Mhm.
got this. And I've been going to
And
therapy. Go ahead.
most people don't realize your therapist isn't driving the vehicle. You're
Yes,
always the one that's driving the vehicle, and they're just guiding you along. They're just helping you make
absolutely.
decisions, or rather, just reflecting back what you've actually said. Some of the
Hmm.
solutions that you've come up with in your own mind. People always think that the therapist or psychiatrist is the person that's controlling you. And I think often doctors take that role because people just succumb to them and just fall into them. But you have to always, even your primary care doctor, you are always the person driving the car. You're never
Yes,
supposed to give that power over to anybody to do
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. And this is important. This is what you're touching on is so important. The importance of advocating for ourselves. Because when I
Mhm.
was in the hospital, their agenda, and this is my opinion, but their agenda is to
Mhm.
push the medication. Not so much to hear
Right.
about what's going on. They want to push the medication.
Right.
And so when I came out of the hospital, I was on maybe like four different medications that they put me on. And I'm thinking,
Mm.
I'm not, and I'm thinking, I don't need all this damn medication that they gave me. But it was like, I was on then a search to find somebody who could relate to me. Not so much a
Right.
yes person, because I need somebody to kind of check me and deal with me as I need it, but somebody that I can really get to the heart of things with and heal. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's my purpose. And so I found a sister. It was important that the therapist, the people, the group looked like me, understood me from my
Mm.
from my culture. Um, me who met me where I was. And it wasn't there were times when she would talk with me and she said, Maureen, I hate dealing with you sometimes. And I'm like, why? She's like, because I don't always have the answer for you, and you make me have to deal with myself too. Well, this is therapy for both of
Mhm.
us.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it
Mm.
was very
That's a. I
therapeutic.
don't think people think about that. I
Mhm.
don't think people think about therapists as somebody you can actually select and find what's best for you. We think that is just a
Absolutely.
blanket statement. Even with doctors, the reason I kind of followed your story, and I still kind of follow you from here now on
Yeah.
social media. But I remember at 30, I decided to get, and I think we shared this experience, this conversation once, where I had the sister girl therapist who was telling me more about her story than I was telling her about mine. And in
Mhm.
that moment, I realized I had to, I can't just go to somebody who is a licensed therapist. I have to really do my research and really
Yes.
find out, because the young lady who told, and I'm not saying anything about her was bad. I think
Right.
her experience with me wasn't good, but the young lady who recommended her to me, that personality worked for her. It didn't necessarily work for me. And I remember you talking about you wanting to wean yourself off of the medication and
Yes.
what that process was. Can you tell us what that felt like for you in terms of kind of getting the medication out or making that
Act-
decision to wean it
so
out?
I think deep down in all of us, there's a knowing. There's just a
Right.
knowing that we have that something just doesn't meet with what your needs really are. And
Hmm.
it was when they put me on all these depressive medications based off of before actually figuring out what was going on. They were just like, well, yeah, you're not depressed, we get it, it's just anxiety, but here, use this medication instead. And it was just a deep knowing that
Mm.
this is not what I'm supposed to be taking. And so when
Right.
when I on my journey to finding my tribe, my therapy, where I would be going to, um, they did a actual like analysis of me. They listened to me. They made sure they understood like what was going on with me. And then they came up, they was like, you're not depressed, love. You just got PTSD and anxiety. So we're gonna take you off of this medicine and this medicine. So the great thing is that they just kind of slowly took me off instead of just see with those types of medications, you don't want to just drop off of those medications because it's pretty dangerous. So it started off with
Hmm.
maybe taking my usual doses to like the following month taking one dose to the following month taking no doses. So they had to slowly
Mm.
wean me off. So I actually didn't feel any side effects because of that,
Did the
and
medication? I know some people who are on the medication says that it kind of slows them down
mhm.
or it takes them out and make them feel different. Was that your experience?
So I want to say I don't know because I wasn't on the medication long enough to know
Okay.
how I had just got started. I maybe have been like a month or 2 months in. I did feel some normalcy when I had anxiety levels really high, but they put me on
Hmm.
there was a medication that they put me on that I still have that I can use only as needed. And that actually works the best for me when if I feel like mine, because I still see the thing is that we always are going to deal with some form of anxiety or some type of
Hmm.
trauma because that's constant. But it helps me if it gets out of hand, so it brings it down. That helps me to actually feel
Hmm.
calm. But I do understand what they mean. Like some of those medications can really bring you down too low and you just don't feel like doing
Hmm.
nothing. I haven't had
Right.
the chance, thank God I haven't had the chance to experience that.
To kind of live through that.
Yeah, and that's because again, deep knowing and that persistence to advocate for myself, and get the right help for me, the help that was
Hmm.
suitable for me, for them to take what I said seriously and really diagnose me properly because a lot of us are actually misdiagnosed. And sometimes, like especially if you're put into these hospitals, they want to automatically like depressed, instead of
Right.
really digging deeper and finding out what could be based off of like what they've learned about you.
You just said something interesting because I always tell people depression is normal.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize how normal anxiety could be also. And they're kind of one and the same. They're two separate things, but they kind of mirror each other in many cases. But I think people they run away from being anxious. They run away from being anxious or depressed or
Mm-hmm.
sad. They run away from that and they don't realize it's their body's natural way of getting rid of
Mm-hmm.
whatever that issue is, or kind of helping it to come to the surface a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to how they are normal things? It's just when it gets to a more consistent level, that's when you should start worrying about it. At what point should we start worrying about depression or anxiety or sadness?
Absolutely. I think that depression, anxiety is something that's normal for all of us. It happens, but when it becomes
Mm-hmm.
excessive, when it gets to a point where your life is being interrupted, your normal day-to-day
Mm,
activities are being interrupted, or if you find that what you're doing could be abnormally excessive. Maybe you're doing a little too much of something that you normally don't do. Maybe you're drinking more or you're smoking more, or
mm,
these are things that only with connecting to ourselves and being getting to know who we are, really getting in touch with ourselves, do we understand, all right, this is the next move I need to make. For me, when
mm-hmm.
I came to a point where I felt suicidal, when I was afraid to be in the house and my children find me, because my boys were right upstairs, when I was having these suicidal thoughts, and they're in the meantime playing video games. I was so afraid, for myself. When my thoughts became uncontrollable, when I felt out of control, is when I got the help. When anxiety, because I've always
Mm,
had anxiety. I've had anxiety back as far as I can remember. But when it gets to a point where you are frozen and incapable of doing what
mm,
your normal day to day, you're in bed all day. You can't seem to get out the bed, or you're overeating, or you're doing something excessive that you're not comfortable with, that isn't normal. I think that's when we need to take that moment to assess whether or not it's time for us to move forward.
How do
Help.
you how do you suggest someone reaches out for help in that moment? What do you? I know everybody has a different outlet, but in your opinion, how do you think we should reach out when we get to that point of like a crash almost?
I think that the best thing to do would be for me, I can only speak for myself. I went straight to my
Mm-hmm.
friends, someone that I can trust, someone who's been down this road before. Um, the next thing I did was I went to the doctors. I went to the hospital. I went to the doctors next, to just kind of discuss with
Mm,
them what was going on, my primary care. And then from there, I went to the hospital, to the emergency room.
mm,
And I just took, but that takes somebody to really like be okay with, because once I got to the emergency room and said, "Hey, look, I'm having suicidal thoughts," things got real quick. Like, they put me in this room where I couldn't touch nothing. They were locked me in this room from myself, and it could be
oh
scary. My
wow.
kids were scared. My daughter was with me through the whole journey, and it terrified her, but she was with me through it all. And but it just takes that kind of strength, because what's going to happen, and this happened for me and it may not happen for everyone, but it's going to take a level of bravery for yourself, because people ain't going to
Mm,
understand what you're going through. They're going to be like, well, just go to sleep, just breathe it out, you'll be all right, you know
mm,
and whole time you're going through something, and people ain't going to always understand, or you're going to have family members that ain't going to always understand. So a lot of this journey was just me and my kids and my neighbor, because my neighbor just got
right.
it, and a few of those who
Okay.
knew. But that's what I had to do.
How so now, and not necessarily, we're never really out of that space, but how are you maintaining now? What's your maintenance or self-care? That's a big term that we're using now. How do you maintenance this or self-care yourself now?
So right now it's a lot of meditation. It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of slowing down and doing what makes me happy. being okay with saying no. It's going to therapy. It's being okay with how I feel and no judgment. It's really a self-care journey. It really is a self-love, self-care, like really being okay with how you feel, really being okay with the fact that you don't feel good today, you feel good tomorrow. It's all of that love on top of working out, going to the gym, getting your manis, getting your petties, getting your massage. Like those things are good, but underneath that, the real work is loving on yourself when it is that you're going through that anxiety attack and being okay. There's been moments when, I'm healing, but I'm still having a moment. You know what I mean? And it was a lot of that being okay with the journey. That's freeing me even today. It's freeing me even today.
I want to remind everybody, if you want to join in the conversation, if you have any questions for Maureen, definitely give us a text. You can text us at 443-642-9403. Please tune in, ask any questions that you may have. I, 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 as a newfound journalist, I've had an issue with going after people who are experiencing things or showing things until I see them at a space where they are open to talking about it. And I've been really wanting to talk to you, one, because mental health or the lack of proper mental health treatment is something that runs in my family. I remember walking in a room with my grandmother often, and she was talking to herself, and she was having deep conversations, and I would have been standing there for maybe 5 minutes, and before she realized somebody was in the room with her. And I remember seeing that throughout my aunts and my uncles, and then my extended family as well, variations of it, mood changes. And so it's something that I've purposely tried to maintain in myself. So I sometimes come across as a real cool person that's real even keel, and that's because I don't allow myself to be overly excited, because I always feared that type of behavior can snap us into those moments, especially when you're dealing with life situations. How are you now? I'll ask you, has this changed how you are with people in terms of your mood and how you address issues?
Oh, absolutely. Because my peace is everything. My peace is everything. And I will say, like, it started back in 2018, where once I had this and I hit bottom like that, it was like,
Right.
okay, if I can survive this, if I can make peace with this, then what I have to do is, if maintaining peace is important to me, then I got to make sure that everything around me is peace driven, knowing that we're going to all
Right.
go through something, but maintaining that stability for me is so important. So if I'm dealing with somebody who I feel intuitively, because that's another thing for me, is really getting connected. So, and paying attention
Mm.
to your gut, like when your gut is telling you something, that is telling you something for a reason. And the more I became in touch with those gut feelings, those intuitive thoughts and feelings, the more I started honoring, okay, this relationship, I just need to love from a distance. I need to love that relationship
Mm.
from a healthy place that's not too close to me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And just setting those clear, respectable boundaries for myself. Something that I never did before,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. It was like I was a yes
Mm-hmm.
person. I was a yes person. I was a, okay, whatever's going to make you happy person. You need
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm going to be there person. Forget the fact that I got anything going on in my life. I'm going to be there for you because
Mm-hmm.
you need me, and I want to prove to you that I can be a good friend. You know, I could be whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, which I learned
Mm-hmm.
that behavior stemmed back way into childhood, that pleasing behavior. And when I realized that, I was just like, it's just important for me to be mindful of the people, places, and things in my life that aren't conducive to my highest and best.
I share a lot of those uh, moments in terms of setting boundaries
Mhm.
and learning how to effectively uh, keep my space as calm as possible. But in the course of a day, I work with children. You're
Yeah.
working with the artists and community. Sometimes it's difficult,
Mhm.
but in that, how do you communicate your boundaries without sometimes it's gonna rub people the wrong way, especially
Mhm.
when it's family or close friends. They
Mhm.
will take it personal that you're not calling, that you don't want to call, that you pause them or cut them off. How do you suggest we communicate that we set this boundary so it's not this imaginary force field that we have around us?
Oh my gosh, yes. I think that I can only speak for myself when I say honesty is the best thing.
Hmm.
Those who love you will understand, you know, and then those who don't quite understand it, and maybe we need to question why they're what their purpose is if they're not really respectable of what we're
Hmm.
asking for. And so in my honesty, I just say no. And I give them understanding if I can. If sometimes the no is all the answer they're gonna need, you know. But if it's something that
Hmm.
they're asking me for, I've been asked to be co-host on shows, you know, to run and help projects. I just tell them, you know, right now I'm just kind of focusing on myself, you know, focusing on some personal endeavors, but I'll definitely take that into consideration later down the road if, you know, if the opportunity still exists. So that way they still
Yes.
respect where I'm at in my life. And
Hmm.
but then I also say, you know, and this might sound kind of tough, but I can only be responsible for what I say and what I do. And as long as what I say and what I do is within love and it's giving you what I'm saying to you is with love, then how that person handles it, that's a journey all with it. That's a whole nother journey within themselves. And that's just something that
Hmm.
I've had to learn not to take so personal because I am a person who takes other people's feelings sometimes over mine. Their feelings will override mine. And so
That
um,
empath type of
yeah,
connection.
yeah, and I'll take
Hmm.
how they feel very personal and want to almost accommodate their feelings. But um, if I'm saying it with love, if I'm operating out of love, and I'm setting a clear boundary by speaking in my truth and conveying that message with love, then how they handle it, I can only pray that they receive it with love and we move forward. And I've had those friendships that have shown me, hey, I love you and I'm riding with you regardless. And I appreciate those who understood those boundaries.
And most and sometimes uh, I, well, I'll speak to you're in a profession right now where you have your own spa. You started your own spa, and you're
Hmm.
doing some meditative healing work and mindful work in the
Hmm.
community. How do you still protect your energy and your space from the unknown? Sometimes these are clients you don't know. How do you
Absolutely.
still protect yourself in that moment?
So it's really important, like for me, within the first few minutes of meeting anybody, I ground myself. So I always make it to my space within 15 to 20 minutes or so before that client get there. I set the intention,
Mm,
set clear intentions. Um, for me, I use crystals. I use healing sounds and music. For somebody that maybe not, you know, is not into all of that, maybe they just want to just be quiet with themselves for a little bit, you know. Listen to music that feels good to them. Those are things I set the tone for what I want my space to feel like for when that client comes in. And
mm.
so far so good. I've been the my clients have been pretty receptive to that that environment, because number one is allowing myself to dissolve whatever personal stuff I got going on before I meet with them. And in addition, whatever they got going on, I'm already available to help in that healing process. So that time, that 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes is really all I need to kind of assess and get grounded.
This sounds great, but the daily application of it can be really difficult, especially when you are an empath. It can be really difficult to maintain that constant balance. Do you have days where you have to stop and just update yourself or reboot yourself in a moment?
Oh, absolutely. Because when I'm not working at the spa, I do a couple of nights at the casinos where I do chair massage at the casinos, and I'm meeting people from all walks of life that's coming in from all types of directions. And there are moments when I have to walk off the floor and ground myself, or if it's not at the casino, maybe sometimes it's, I'm just not in the mood to do a massage today. I just don't feel like it. So what I do is, I just try to get into a place that's to my best ability. I might not be at 100% today, but I might be at 90. I might be at 80. And being okay with that. You know what I mean? That's as long as I'm giving my best, my absolute best in that moment. That's what's more important to me. And that I'm there. I'm available. But man, when I'm having those moments, I take a time out for myself. I'm self-employed, so yes, I could just say today I'm not doing nothing. But I know for some people that's not as easy. So I encourage you to just find, even if it's a minute, even if it's 2, 3 minutes, to just sit, with yourself, or remove yourself from whatever it is and just breathe. I had a friend last night who contacted me last night in an uproar, whatever was going on in their personal life. I was not emotionally available for them, so I did not pick up the phone because I already knew I would not be available to them. However, I did text that person and told them to breathe, because sometimes if we just breathe, that, consciousness or bringing us forward will be helpful just in itself. It doesn't, some people think it has to be deep. It doesn't have to be deep. It doesn't have to be crystals and saged out and incense out. Sometimes just breathing is good enough.
Now, I'm going to take a bit of a turn dealing with romantic relationships. When you're dealing with this, is a lot different than your mom or your friend or a coworker. What advice would you give to individuals that may be in a similar path as you, dealing with romantic relationships or the various types of relationships that we find ourselves in?
That's a good question. For me, when you get to a place where you're like really working on yourself, it doesn't matter what relationship you're in. You just know, you just continue to work on what's in your highest and best. And so, I'm one of those individuals that can really remove myself from anybody that's not serving my highest and is not conducive to me. So I would say for those who are in romantic relationships that want to be there, that really want to assess that situation, people show up in our lives as mirrors. And they're kind of like the ingredient or the recipe to whatever it is that's going on within ourselves that need work. So if you're in a relationship,
good, bad, or indifferent,
right, and it's like if you're choosing, because everything's a choice, if you're choosing to stay in a relationship that's not, serving you, then one would want to understand then what is there to learn. And I think once we get to a place where we ask ourselves, because that's an inside question, what is this relationship here to teach me? And then be available to what those answers are. Because once you ask, you'll get the answers. It'll be a little voice, it'll be an answer, it'll be something that he or she said. But then that relationship could potentially work because you're now understanding where these people fit in your life. And it could be that these people are just there to serve the higher purpose in your evolution, to grow and keep evolving. They're not meant to stay forever. And that's the problem. I think a lot of us keep people in our lives and people, friends, romantic or not, we keep people in our lives that are meant to only serve for a moment. And if we choose to keep them longer than intended, then we have problems, you know what I'm saying? And if those problems are existing, then this is definitely an opportunity to learn about whatever it is that we could be, could do better within ourselves. And then when you figure that out, then, but to find your peace in that would be to continue to like work with love in that relationship, and
I
see.
find I find a lot of what you're saying right now to be true,
Mhm.
especially in a moment like this, because I avoided contact in the last couple years because
Mhm.
I wanted to I wanted to work on myself, but I wanted to really like fall back in love with me and
Mhm.
really understand what I wanted out of life and what I did not want. In a moment like this, where we are all supposed to be quarantined in a house, I'm finding it a little bit like last night was the first night where the energy of like wanting to that urge of wanting to be touched
Mhm.
or have face to face contact came into play,
Mhm.
and I made the mistake of putting like Selena Johnson on the radio, and her voice makes you feel like I need somebody in my in
Yes.
my space, and I was really dealing with myself so much so that like I was ready to reach out to you like, can we reschedule this because I got into my own mind and all of us are getting text messages from exes and
Oh my
those
gosh,
wannabes
yes.
and right and it's just that feeling of well if I if you know I'm home I'm not doing anything but then keeping yourself honest and that integrity that you kind of made a deal with yourself like even in this moment, I'm not gonna go backwards, or I'm not gonna be. And it's been hard for me to be that transparent, even in with situations like this.
Mhm.
To realize even I get weak spots, even I fall. I succumb to my thoughts or my flesh sometimes, and
Mhm.
speak on like in this moment things that we can do when we find ourselves in one of those Selena Johnson moments. I,
Okay.
her voice just scared me, and that cool air coming in the window, and it was just a lot. It was a lot. It
I'm
was a
gonna
lot.
tell you. Okay, so we're gonna go there. I'm gonna tell you when you realize just how okay, so being somebody whose vice was sex all the time, I'm just gonna go there for myself, right? That intimate
Mm-hmm.
touch, that need to be we ain't even gotta be in a relationship like that. That was one of
Mm-hmm.
my vices in dealing with depression and anxiety and didn't even realize that. But
Mm-hmm.
then the more I became in love with myself and I understood myself and I understood how important that intimacy was, that connection was, I didn't want to
Right.
interact with just anybody no more. People started looking differently for me. So no longer was it about just being physically attractive to me no more. It was like you got to have something else coming with you because for some reason, the more I worked on myself, the heightened I became and the less I wanted to just deal with just anybody. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like once I got to that place, then people became more and more relevant for me. That does not mean that I don't have like my moments. I gotta pray those things away sometimes, you know, because it gets tough. It gets tough, and especially during this time where you can't just reach out to somebody and connect because of all that's going on. And Luther Vandross is on, and you can't just and that and that wind is just blowing over your skin. You just there like
uh-huh.
all by yourself. But it's like the
Yep.
moment I start thinking about that, then I'm like, all right. I start looking at my phone list and I'm like, that relationship, no,
Mhm.
no.
Uh-huh.
And then
Right.
it's like somehow I reel myself back in because I'm like, you know, yeah, I'm worthy of much more. I'm worthy of so much more than that, and that's
Right.
for me. That's how I work with it. Um, considering that I work also with the energy of chakras and other stuff, I know to pull, to work with my chakras to help me kind of get through those moments. So for me, it's
Mhm.
energy work that helps me out as well. But yeah, that's how I deal with it. I come to grips with that's how I feel. I deal with it however
Mhm.
I choose to deal with it, and I keep it pushing. That's the best thing I could do is just work through it.
And be real about it. If you're like it's been a reality the last couple weeks, but last night I think it was just like a heightened because one thing that people are doing now, everybody's communicating. And I
Yes,
don't know if it's this, but people are texting more. People
yes.
are wanting to have phone conversations more. I've been posting stuff on my Facebook, and I normally get a nice response, but it'd be like just popping up, and it's making people wanna that one-on-one more because
Yeah.
people are being more in communication.
Mhm.
In terms of all the things that you're doing now, in terms of your spa, and please feel free to put the information out on so we know how to get to it and support you.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
what made you go into this direction in terms of work and passion and combining all those things?
You know what? I shout out my ex for that because my ex, he was like, you know what? I want to be a massage therapist. And at the time, I was heavy into
Um,
real estate, and I said, you know
mm,
what? If you're gonna get into massage, we can't be together. You can do massage, but that's just not where I'm at with you and this because our relationship had trouble with boundaries was an issue in our relationship. So I just knew that was like the cutoff for me. But I don't know. That was like the seed. You know what I mean? He invested that seed and it was just like, you know what? I've always been told that I'm a healer, that I'm good with my hands, all these things that I've heard, give great massages. Let me just go into it. And then when I saw the earning potential, I originally got into it for money. I was like, okay, I can make some extra money on the side. And it wasn't until I
mhm,
got into the school um, I got into the school and I started moving forward that I realized, okay, this is deeper than just working on my working, getting money. This is looking like this is where I'm supposed to be. And
mhm,
then when I went through that whole crisis, that whole healing crisis, it was even more confirmed because a lot of what I learned in massage school helped me to get through a lot of those rough times.
mm. Do
Yeah.
you do you contribute that to helping you kind of get through all of this because you were like in the midst of it? Like I
Mhm.
think you were just about to finish or you were close to finishing
Mhm.
and then you had your episode. Like how much of that really lent itself to you being able to now make it a business and make it work for you and help you at the same time?
It was a lot of it had a lot to do with it. Again, it was like I guess I would contribute to the school that I went to because their focus was not just massage. Massage, you can do that, get that done in like 6 months. I actually stayed for about 11 months because they focus on
Mhm.
energy work. They focus on you as a person. So they made us get
Um,
massage. They made us take care of ourselves. That was a part of our grade that we had to learn how to take care of ourselves because if we didn't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of our clients. And so that was a big like them forcing us like you got to get a grade to take care of yourself. That right there was like, okay,
um,
let me pay a little bit more attention to what I've been neglecting all this time, and I think in
right.
taking care of myself, those things then began to uproot itself and come up, because now that energy is moving, and now I got to pay attention to this feeling and anxiety.
Mm.
It was like it was starting to push those things to the surface.
How I think I was trying to ask, oh, it just jumped out my head. But in terms of you working in this field, where do you, I know what it was. How hard is energy work and massage therapy? I have a couple friends that do this, but how hard is it on your body physically? Like, how does it not necessarily
Yeah.
harm you, but how taxing is it on your body?
It can be very taxing if you're not grounding yourself properly. And then we spoke on it
Uh-huh.
earlier about the importance of just taking a few minutes for yourself, taking as much time as you need before clients to like assess yourself and to get grounded with yourself, because energy is real. And what happens is I've noticed that
Mhm.
in my earlier days of working with clients, when I didn't properly ground myself, I found myself walking away with whatever they had on them. So if they were dealing with anxiety, if they were dealing with some type of pain or whatever they had, it felt like energetically it just attached itself to me. And then that becomes very taxing. So I learned how to properly ground myself and assess myself before working with clients, because it can be very taxing, especially if you're not taking that necessary time for you. It's probably honestly why I did start my own business as opposed to working for a place that did a lot of turn and burn with clients, because I'm
Mhm.
really, really adamant about my self care, especially considering where I came from. I just was afraid initially of just going backwards. And so my work
Yeah.
is constantly like, go forward, you know. And so, um,
Because you're physically touching people. Like
yes,
that's the exchange of energy just based off of shaking a hand or doing a massage or having to lift or turn, or all those things contribute to like getting back into your mental. It can Physical things can often manifest themselves mentally or
yes.
spiritually even.
Yes, absolutely. The one of my clients, I mean, I've had clients who I could tell I knew they were dealing with something, they were dealing with their own suicidal thoughts. And all of a sudden, I'll
Um,
start feeling that suicidal energy. And I think a couple of my friends remember I went online, was like, is anybody feeling like they want to, feel suicidal? Are y'all okay? Is everybody okay? And they're like, I'm
Come through,
okay.
prophetess. That's that prophetess work right there. Come
Yeah,
through.
yeah, and I felt it,
Mhm.
and to find out she was feeling that way. So I was like, and I learned
Mm.
from some of my teachers that our bodies resonate with whatever we're in connection with. So whatever we went through or been through, we can identify with that going through, with someone else. So because I experienced what suicidal thoughts and feelings feel like for me, I was able to like when touching that person could feel it. And it felt really,
Mhm.
really easy. Although I didn't realize it was coming from her initially, from that person initially. So yeah,
But
it's
you're learning how to kind of scoop that out. Do you,
yeah.
I went to one therapist, one physical therapist, and she was talking to me as we were
Mhm.
doing it, and it was distracting because I never had it before, but it actually was calming me down because I don't like to be touched a lot.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, do you talk to your clients, or is it just a case by case, or you just don't do it at all?
So it's a case by case, because I've learned that every client deals with whatever they're feeling differently. I've learned that some they're dealing with some type of trauma or comfort level for themselves. So talking for them constantly through a session where they should be relaxed, that to me tells me, okay, they're working through something. I have some clients, as soon as they hit my table, they go right to sleep. that is also what I've learned is another way that they handle whatever stress. Some people go right to sleep to deal with their stress. Some people, talk a lot to deal with what they're going through. And then you got some clients who are just inquisitive. There's nothing going on with them. They just would rather talk through the whole session. I've had clients who will just break down and cry. And if that happens, then I allow them that moment to like kind of work through what they're feeling. I ask if they want me to continue. Some just need a moment, or some will actually, because touch is, we're working with people, whether you're a massage therapist or whatever profession, we're dealing with people every day from all walks of life. And sometimes I've seen from being in the hospital, you could talk about something as simple as going to the beach and you'll trigger somebody, because for someone that moment at the beach could have been the most terrifying moment for them. And so I try to meet my clients or people in general where they are, to the best of my ability. And so most of my clients come to me. Some of them have dealt with some serious trauma, have touch issues. And so I try to work with them through that. It's all about, again, like assessing yourself, getting connected with yourself first, and then working with those clients, and being able to be available to them. That's why it's so important to in any profession, to ground yourself and get centered.
It's for me, this kind of sticking to that touch thing with trauma and touch. One coming from a family where we didn't really hug much, and people often think about touch as a means of sexual a sexual feeling. And for me, it is a basic human need. So even last night, it wasn't even sex. It was just like touch, feel somebody's energy in your space, but it is a weird thing for me to talk about touch, because I think most people automatically go to that sexual side, even though all of it is good, all of it is necessary, and all of it is needed. But how can we as people get through that uncomfortable feeling of touch, or get more? Because I think more people would get more massages and things like that if it wasn't necessarily connected to a sexual thing. I think people who need it would probably get more of it if they didn't have that
right
uncomfortable relationship with
That's
touch.
really a good question. I'll say that because that's a good question, because I grew up over sexualized, being exposed very early. Be a young lady. Don't do that. Don't do that, because that's not ladylike. Anything that remotely looked uncomfortable to to adults, then became my problem to deal with. So I was afraid to touch. I was afraid to connect to people, hugging people. So again, I would say this was my purpose, because initially coming into massage, it was very hard for me to work on men, because I always felt like men were automatically assumed that I was thinking they were over sexualizing me, or I was fearful that they would think that I was over sexualizing them just by means of touch. And so there became a shame factor almost that I had to work through. And I would say the only thing that we can do to get through it is to really make a conscious decision to work through it. Like, for instance, some of my clients may not feel comfortable to get undressed completely. So I'll say, hey, get undressed to your comfortability, whatever is comfortable for you, first and foremost. That's where we work from. And then some may want the blanket on, some may want it partially, we keep the blanket on entirely, but there may be some ways that they would prefer to be touched over other ways. it's just a matter like case by case, but I would encourage anybody to just make a choice that if it is that your goal is that you want to work through that trauma of touch, is to just kind of work through it and just take it one step at a time. That's also another reason why I decided to work at the casino, because it's so male
Mm,
dominated that it was so therapeutic for
mm,
me to be able to go into that space and work on these clients and these men that are coming from all directions, and it helped me work
mm.
through that shame factor, which wasn't my responsibility. Therapy also
Right.
helped me with that too.
It's a real well, me experiencing it and me having it as a reality and how I was raised. But I've met and come across people who don't think it, and normally they come from families where they hug and kiss each other a lot, and they know good touch versus bad touch. And for many of us, we don't, and it wasn't something that was naturally in us. We
Yeah.
all naturally want to be touched, and
Mhm.
they've done studies with the babies and all that. But a lot of us, it's a boundary because
Mhm.
maybe the touch came at an inappropriate way at some point in life, and it just
Mhm.
did not. It never was addressed or dealt with. So now, as adults, for me, I know personally, it really takes a lot for me to be in somebody's space. And me being
Mhm.
I'm a theater artist. All they do is hug and touch each other, and now we're in this we're kind of in this Me Too movement where inappropriate touch is now being addressed. So now you're having to be more mindful of how you touch or if you touch or so now we have these boundaries up against each other. And I
Mhm.
think with this being in a house for weeks at a time now, it really has heightened my need to be touched. So that need that we have as humans to be touched is starting to like make you want to shake a hand or hug or cuddle
Oh
or
yeah.
and I in my mind I'm like that ain't you, that ain't who you are. Like what is going on? And like fighting, like how do we or have you thought about ways within your work to kind of address that in a community way of dealing with touch as a strengthening agent and not just when it's nighttime type of thing.
Understood. Honestly, no. I think because I haven't had the opportunity to really like go there, like get deep with my clients like that, because they're just coming for a massage and then they go home. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so I haven't had that opportunity, but that's a great thing. And I've talked with this with my therapist, and I've learned that a lot of this just became from, as we grow up and we're going through this bad touch, good touch situation. It's like we weren't taught safe boundaries, so things happen, and then we kind of grow up with these things. But I think that's a great conversation to have within a community, to talk about this,
Mm,
especially even more now with like the full moon is making everybody feel some type of way. I think the full moon happens within the next couple of
that's
days.
what it is.
Yes. The full moon has got
Last oh
everybody.
that explains it.
Yeah. And then you have
Mm,
just this all this social distancing is now making people more aware of just how important it is to connect. So I think this is that discussion right there, what you talk about, is something I think is definitely needed in the community, and it should be encouraged to
mhm.
talk about.
I had did a couple workshops like on consent and within arts communities. And one of the things that when I do the survey at the end, one of the things that was brought up was that confusion around the good touch, bad touch, and being open to friends and family giving you a hug. And I didn't really think it was a widespread issue well, really outside of my family or people that I know who had been molested or raped, I didn't really think it was that many people who are really dealing with that. Because
Mhm.
that can create an anxiety when you know you have to hug somebody. And some of like you are a hugger. And I remember even being at the station and certain guests want to hug you. And I'm always in my mind with it, like, do I give a fake hug or do I just get into it, or
Yeah.
do I just automatically put my hand out? And I don't ever want to come across as rude, but it used to be very uncomfortable to me to
Mhm.
just simply hug somebody, or somebody may put their hand on your shoulder when you're standing beside. And it used to be very uncomfortable. And the more aware I made myself, the less anxious I became around people who were huggers. Because I
Mhm.
just, in my mind, I'm like, let me just give them what they want. But I still had to set those boundaries because it was uncomfortable to me. And that was my norm because it was uncomfortable.
Yeah. I agree. I grew up again ladylike. That's not ladylike. Or be
Mm-hmm.
careful hugging uncle somebody or cousin somebody. And
Mm-hmm.
it was almost to me, let me say that in my opinion, sometimes it almost made me feel like I was the problem. Like I couldn't wear my regular dress that I love because I'm a
Yep.
teenager, and this is what we wear. Instead, I need to be conscious because uncle somebody or cousin somebody, or
Yeah.
you want to be careful about what you look like, or don't hug him, and that created an anxiety for me in my adult
Right.
life because that boundary was very uncomfortable for me because I didn't know if I was crossing a boundary. I was always socially awkward because I didn't know
Mm.
how to deal with people because I was always taught that be careful what you wearing. Don't look too cute, or don't hug or get
Mm.
too connected. Um, you
How
know.
did that translate into you being a mother? Because you have sons and a daughter.
Mhm.
So how did that translate into you being a mother?
I have to be conscious with my daughter. Like I don't think about it so much with my boys. I'm always mindful to remind them, like, of how they should treat a young lady, and to respect their boundaries, and that they're just as worthy as that female is. Like we're raising women to just believe that they're worthy, and men should be taught that as well. So I always try to make sure I
Mm-hmm.
let them know. With my daughter, I'm still working through it because I find myself sometimes, hey Simone, be careful wearing that because I don't want people looking at you. You know what I mean? And it's a
Mm.
constant self-check, self-analysis, like, oh man. And I'm going back and I'm apologizing to her because I'm like, you know what? I don't mean to make you feel that way. If I make you feel like you're the problem in any way, I apologize. So it's like that constant self-check as a parent, to be mindful of not repeating the same cycles that happened with me.
I'm always interested when I do talk to parents that may have either a boy or girl or both. Why is, and what you said is very valid, but you never thought to also be that way with your sons in a world where we're realizing a lot of men are being touched just as much?
Yeah, I mean, with my boys, so my oldest son, he has a special needs. So I guess I missed that
Mm-hmm.
opportunity with him. He does know bad touch, good touch. So he's very
Right.
aware of that. And but my youngest, my 13-year-old, I'm learning with him, yeah, to be mindful of I'm always asking him, because it seems like their culture like to fight on each other a lot. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
So I'm always asking him, like,
Mm.
is there a female that's putting their hands on you? Are you okay? He's like, I'm okay.
That's how
I'm
they're
all
showing
right.
love right now.
Yeah, that's just
So
how they show.
somehow, and I see that in a lot of middle schools, really
Yeah,
in middle schools a lot, but
yeah,
definitely in high schools too. That's really how they show love. There's a lot of young ladies and young men that are in relations with people who are physically aggressive with them, whether it be fighting or hitting. And to them, that's how a relationship goes, and
yeah.
that's weird to me.
It's weird. It's
That's
weird to me, and
weird.
so I'm always mindful of that because I do have a boy, and he's in
Hmm.
seventh grade, and I'm just like, hey, are you You okay in school? Anybody, like a check-in, like, hey, you good? Any female putting their hands on you, doing anything? And he's pretty honest with me. He'll let me know, no, or
Hmm.
and I'm just like, okay, well, if that's happening,
Just let me know.
let me know. You know what I'm saying? But don't put your hands on the girl. Like there's things. It's like almost like. And I have to be honest. I'll be like, hey, but if she puts her hands on you, she keeps putting your hands. If you got to slam her, you got to do what you got to do. But don't punch her, because your punch is probably a little
Hmm.
harder than hers. If you got to push her
Yeah.
good. Push her good, and she'll never put her hands on you ever again. You know what I mean? And it's sad that it's got to be like that, but it's like,
Hmm.
so
That's a
it's
reality.
that's the reality. It's like, yeah. So I just kind of deal with them. My oldest is now 22, so I know when she was in
Hmm.
school, she had her trials and tribulations, and they're all coming up in different times. So I'm doing the best that I can. Honestly, it's like it's a one day at a time situation with kids.
Hmm. And in terms of business wise, it's shifting gears a little bit. Where are you with being this creative spirit and balancing the business with that as well? Are you there yet, or are you dealing with more one side than the other, or do you have a healthy balance?
You're saying like with family and business?
Well, no, just business in general. Are you? Because some of us who are creatives, business is not there. We don't
Yeah.
know. We lose that part in being so creative. But do you have a healthy balance with business and creativity as well?
Yes, I would say that my business side is stronger because I've been in business for myself for over 10 years. So I
Okay.
ran a daycare center. I've been in real estate. I've always been business minded, business centered.
Hmm.
Being that creative space started back in 18. So that whole like
Okay.
letting my wings fly and being totally transparent and comfortable in my skin and being available and open to creative energy, and that's still
Hmm.
work in progress, but it's beginning to average itself out, so I'm becoming more comfortable in that creative space.
What can we expect from you in like the near future in terms of your spot? Is it a full out spa, or what services do you offer?
So it's just myself right now. I offer massage. I'm actually in school now working on my esthetician license, so I'll be doing facials in the coming year, waxing, all that good stuff. And um,
I'll be there. I'll be there. I'll
yes,
be there.
yes. I'm also, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. So I work with clients who are looking for like self improvement, looking to like stop smoking or lose weight. I work with those clients in hypnotherapy. And then I do Reiki sessions with my clients with energy work.
Now, okay, so Reiki for a second.
Hmm.
One, what's her name? She is one of the owners of everyone's place, and she was the only person who's ever done like a Reiki treatment on me, if you will.
Hmm. Hmm.
I was lost as to what I was supposed to feel. Um,
Yeah.
I had this like I was sitting in a chair, and I ended up like leaning all the way back and not even realizing it.
Wow.
Um, but what are you supposed to feel from Reiki? Like, how am I supposed? What is it helping me with?
So Reiki is just us using the natural energy force from God within ourselves. So it's not us doing anything to anyone. It's the God force that's working
Okay.
through us. But what you're supposed to feel, I guess, determines whatever it is that what your body wants to show up and express. So you have some clients who may have blockages. Chakras are those energy portals within our body. There's 7 of them. And whenever one of those are blocked, what happens is your body shows up in a different way. So if your solar plexus is blocked, for instance, your solar plexus is right there, right above your navel, then you could be having
Mm-hmm.
indigestion. It could show up with cramping. It could show up in those ways. And whenever those energy portals are blocked, it shows up in maybe a sore throat. We know that there's something going on with your ability to speak your truth. So we know right there we need to
Mm,
unblock that. If you're a person who's survival skills, things are like survival mode, then we know there could be something going on with your root chakra, which is right below your navel, and so it's uh it's it's work that has to be done. It only is a case by case expression of each person, and it,
mm,
it could show up differently. Maybe that person, like you said, you were leaning backwards. Maybe subconsciously your body was either receiving or not receiving what was happening in the moment. It depends on, the experience. I've had some clients tell me that they feel energy of waves happening. Um, I have clients who don't feel nothing in that moment, but might feel some things happening after within a
it
couple of
releases
days.
over time.
It'll release over time.
Mm.
And so it's a case by case situation for each person. Depends on what they have going on.
How does it feel to be in your lane, like in your lane,
Oh
like
my God.
finally? And it's nothing wrong. I don't want to make it seem like there's anything wrong with helping other people or
hmm
supporting other people. But how does it feel to be in your lane, like in
It
your space where
feels,
you feel like I'm doing it?
this feels so good. It feels really good. It feels like for once I'm doing what makes me happy. I'm doing what makes me
Mm,
happy. I'm doing what I love. Those who have come in contact with my work, they're like, yeah, it feels like you're definitely in your purpose. And I just feel it. I feel good about it. I know that I'm being called more to be vocal, to be more vocal
mm,
about this journey. I want to come back to radio soon. I want to really like do this and really begin this movement of helping people, because we can help
mm,
ourselves, but there comes a time when it's now time to take what you've done and start helping other people. And so when my therapist said,
yeah,
"Hey, you're done with this. I'm here for you, but your work here is done." And she always reminded
right.
me, like, as you're healing, it's time for you to help other people to heal too. So I know that it feels good to be in this space. I'm being challenged, but I'm ready.
Mm. I'm a people watcher, and I think my gift is that the putting out fires and connecting, binding things.
Yes.
And I watch people a lot, and it just feels like you just you just sit differently now, and I could tell your speech is different now, and just the clarity, really, not even the physical aspects of who you are, but just the
Yes.
clarity and who you are. And I love watching people grow. It's
Yes.
just something about that growth process in people, and you could just see them in their space. I see a lot of people who try to be there and only doing it because it's something that's popular and it
Mhm.
seems like the thing to do in the moment. But I can tell when somebody's grounded in it, especially
Mhm.
when they have life ties to it. It's not just
Yes.
what made them money, but in my opinion, you really have just opened up. Like it really is showing up and I don't even get to see you that often. So just watching you in this moment, this is not the Maureen that I had heard speak before.
Yes.
And it's just one of it is just you speaking, but I just see it, and I don't know uh, what needs to be said from me. Not to say anything that I need to do to help you, but anything I can do to support you in your mission. I love to watch people grow. And I've just seen you grow, and I've been following your story, and I've even had conversations not necessarily about you, but just things that you've written and how you've been able to help people that you don't even realize you're helping people. And I
Yes.
love to see people in their walk of life. So we only have a couple more minutes left. I wanted to ask you one of my final questions. which is what advice would you give to your 17-year-old self? Uh,
Mm.
and and I'll make it special for you in this moment. But what advice would you give to your 21-year-old self? And what question would you ask to your 100-year-old self?
Oh my gosh, those are good questions. I say 17. I would say, you know what? It can wait. Whatever you think you need to have or need to
Mm,
do, it can wait. The 21-year-old,
wow.
I would say, you know what? It's gonna get better. The best is yet to come. Because I just lost my mother at
Mm,
21, so the best is yet to come.
hmm.
Hang in there, it's okay. And my 100-year-old self, I want to say, well done. You did it.
Wow.
Everything you ever asked to
Would
do.
you wanna ask that 100-year-old self a question though?
Say that again.
Would you wanna ask that 100-year-old self a question?
No, because I envisioned her having done everything she wanted to do, that she has no questions to be asked.
Mm.
She's just ready to exit. She's just ready to go.
Just waiting for my moment.
Just waiting
I
for the
really
moment.
appreciate you.
I
I
appreciate
really,
you. Thank
really
you.
appreciate you. And I'm so proud of your growth and just your initiative. Because most
Yes.
people would have still been back in that moment about 2 years ago. They would have still been in that moment. But the
Yes.
initiative you took to making yourself better and great and just honest,
Yes.
and always we go through things in life, trauma happens, but when we reach a point of healing, we rarely look back to pull people forward. And I
Oh,
think that is the blessing that comes from going through a lesson like that.
yes.
Always thinking about how can this right here, because we go through those things for other people. That's
Yes.
the whole purpose of us going through it, and we don't realize that portion. We stay on that selfish part. And
Yeah.
I'm again, whatever I can do to help you to further that mission that you are now that you have and you had, uh, feel free to reach out anytime. Come back on.
Absolutely.
I want to talk more about this and maybe bring some other people into the conversation. But thank you. I really just thank you.
Absolutely.
That's
I just wanted to say to
sufficient.
you real quick, just I commend you and I thank you for having a platform and your humility and your just comfortability. You have always been a person that was so easy to talk to and so available. And I will say, damn, why is
Mhm.
he so how can he be so damn calm in the midst of what looked like the storm? And so I appreciate you and I'm in
Mhm.
gratitude for this opportunity. Thank you for having me on again.
Just that question, your your experience uh, is like we've had some shared conversations and a
Mm,
lot of stuff that we've both been through, and that's if I have an answer, I have to choose. That's a choice that I make. Like you say, everything is a choice. That's a
mhm.
choice, and we have to choose joy, and we got to choose peace by all means necessary.
Any
We
means
have to
necessary.
choose those
That's
things.
right.
And this has been Miss Maureen Lewis. Tell us how we can find you on social media.
So you can find me Maureen Lewis on Facebook. I'm Mo Divine on Instagram, but you can also find me on Masan Wellness is my business. So MESAN Wellness, and that's on Instagram. And
And
MasanWellness.com.
she's going to send me that information. I'm going to tag that in this post when I share it out after the show. Thank you again, Maureen. I
Thank you.
appreciate you. Many blessings,
To
and
you
I hope
too.
you get through this crisis of this quarantine better yet and ready to kick butt. So thank you again. I
Absolutely.
really appreciate you.
Thank you again. Have a good
Peace.
one.
Thank you. Peace
Peace.
out, everybody. This has been another edition of the Artist Exchange Radio Show. Tune in tomorrow when Marnie himself will be on talking about everything politics, health, corona, all these hot topics, and probably a little salaciousness to mix it all together. So this has been the Artist Exchange Radio Show every Monday and Friday, 5 p.m. to about 6:30 right now doing all this. But thank you again. I appreciate you, Maureen. Everybody that's
Appreciate you too.
listening, please take a moment, share this out with someone who could use this wisdom that this sister just dropped on us. And again, peace out. Thank you. Thank you, Marnie. Thank you, everybody that's tuned in. Peace out.